Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz, and it is Tuesday, October 27th, and we've got some more earnings on the tape. We just had Microsoft report their earnings and a number of other reports today. So let's go over today's price action. Today will be a quick video because I am driving back. I'm doing a little bit of traveling in the beginning of this week, so I've got to get on the road. But let me go over today's price action. There definitely was, I think, some opportunities today, but the theme of the day that I've got up here is that the Qs bounce, right? So if you're kind of hanging out in some growth names and in some more stay-at-home names, like Zoom had another good day, for example. I always associate that name with stay-at-home stocks for some reason. It's not totally what it is, but I think partially what it is. But really not so much for SPY and IWM. They closed down today. Again, early, you know, early bid, into the beginning of the day, and they were sold off a little bit again in the first hour. So it just seems like that's the majority of days that we're getting, where we do get this overnight move. And again, if you're picking up on this trend that I've been talking about now for months, is that it is better to buy the close and sell the open. That worked again, and basically the Qs did actually rally. They looked a little bit testy around like 3 o'clock today, an hour before the close, but they hung in there and they rallied at the end of the day. So it's nice to see that. Just a difference a couple days makes. The small caps, which were leading last week and looked pretty good. I think if you looked at the technicals in IWM last week, you kind of started to think about a small cap rally. Well, not a complete move back. And the same thing for the financials. Of course, there's a big chunk of financials in the small cap ETF and in the small cap index. And, it's a little bit disappointing to see that, right? I mean, I like to basically go wherever the momentum is. And look at what the banks did again. They were down about 2% yesterday. They're down another 3% today. So, it's tough. And they are living up to, I guess, what they've been doing. They just can't really get a trend together. And I do believe that, too, that it's harder to start a trend, right, to get a trend going. Or to get a trend reversal than it is just to stay in a trend, right? I think that that's basically how it works, and we've certainly seen that. So it also like goes into. I like to give a little bit of like just thoughts on overall trends, but I just think over time, sticking with trends, right? Nobody ever knows how long a trend is going to last. I love when people try to time when like, oh, these names are getting too expensive, yet, and then they rally another 20 or 30% in their face. You just never know when a trend is going to break. Or a trend is going to stop until it actually does. I know everybody likes to make those predictions and stick their neck out because it's human nature, but really we just don't know how long trends are going to last until they stop, until they break. And then you watch the technicals. You watch the 50-day moving average. I think that's why so many people will quote the 50-day moving average. It's one of those proxies for an uptrend, right? Depending on what time frame you're on, the 50-day moving average is widely looked at. The 200-day moving average is widely looked at. So let's talk about today's price action. So just again, that's my overall high level for the day. What was really where I kind of and here's the Microsoft results. Right? I think sometimes people, it's a little bit of a head scratcher, right? They see good earnings results and they expect the stock to go up. Here's the pattern of Microsoft's earnings. This is something that we went over. In the trading room, and I did not put on an earnings trade. It was only implying a 4.4% move. But if you put that in perspective of like the last 10 earnings reports, right, in this right column, Microsoft just doesn't really move that much. And there's not a lot of like, normally if they were expecting a bigger move, I would I would trade an iron condor where I'm looking to basically sell premium. But there's not enough premium to really collect. But there it is. It's basically right where it was. I mean, the stock did finish up 1.5%. And if you look at the results, I don't know either, and sometimes I get the results of the name, and then I go look at the chart thinking, wow, it's going to be up a lot or down a lot. And it really just has to do with the expectations, right? It's not about the overall number. Sorry, let me just see if I can get this to work here. Like I said, I'm on my laptop, but I can't seem to page down. There we go. Right. If you look at their numbers, they look like great numbers. And yes, they're yet to have their earnings call, and that's a lot of information usually comes out in the earnings call. But you would think it would have moved already to some. But you look at all these numbers, right? I mean, the estimate, either that the estimate is just too low, there is what's called a whisper number, but it just makes earnings much more difficult than I think most people think, right? There's no free lunch. The options, it costs a lot, except for a company where, like Microsoft, where it traditionally doesn't move. But when we get to later in the week, when we get to names like Amazon, Google, Facebook, and so forth, I mean, there's a chance. I mean, how I usually play earnings, if I really want to take a shot directionally, I do not buy calls outright. I either buy a call spread or I sell a put spread, right? First Solar is a good example of that. Even though First Solar is up to 96, which is a very decent move, they were selling puts yesterday, right? So they were collecting premium, right? That's how most professional institutional traders are going to play in the options market. I think that overall, the retail investor somehow has been taught wrong a little bit, but really, for me, the major earnings trades that I do, I'm selling premium, right? I'm not going long calls because you have to look at to see how much what's called the implied move is and so forth. But you'll learn, like you'll learn this after time. I think everybody has to go through a little bit of trading experience before they learn how these things are priced, and they're very difficult to make money on earnings. You have to have a blowout number like this. Also, ENPH, like for example, ENPH, right? You could see the stock's up big, or at least it was up big. Yeah, it's up to 104. You would think, oh wow, the call buyers made money. No, they were expecting a 22. The options were implying a 22% move for this stock. So a $5 move isn't going to cut it. For basically $100 stock. But interesting, regardless that the solar names are up. But yes, there are no weekly options for ENPH. November options were implying a 22% move. So essentially, you need the stock to move around there for you to get your money back on the premium of the calls. So that's the situation. Also, I think there's a tendency for traders to read too much into the option flow. It's kind of 50-50. Some of them work. When somebody buys calls right before a name reports earnings, I associate a 50-50 chance that they're going to work. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. There's not a ton of edge with that, right? And if anybody has any results that say otherwise, let me know. But this is what I've learned from experience. All right, so let's get to today's price action, where I kind of made some money today. Even though I think going back to what my thought for the day was, I don't think we're kind of out of the woods with this price action to the downside, considering how many sectors, right? If you look at the overall sectors that were down today, we talked about the banks already, but a lot of other areas. The semiconductors didn't act very well today either. They're on the list someplace down here too. Yeah, they finished in the red for the day. They gave back all early gains. Even though there was M&A activity in the space, which is sometimes kind of gets a group going a little bit, but not so much there. The software names did well today, Chinese internet names. Gold miners, biotechs did okay today too. The FANG stocks did well. Again, that kind of skews things a little bit. The FANG stocks are a very big portion of the indices. So when you take those away and look at the rest of the market's performance, it's a little bit of you could see a lot more sectors did not do well today versus doing well. So that being said, of course, we could trade whatever we want to. I got out of some things right around the open because, again, that is that is where most of the money is made, right? In the overnight market, also, if you're trading some options, right, they're going to move faster around the open. So I'm always a seller on the open, right? So I took targets in a Lowe's trade. I did trade a little bit of Amazon today, which worked fine. This SE was a I was giving some examples in yesterday's video that you have to kind of be able to be kind of weather the whipsaw move that we saw. For instance, yesterday I got stopped out of my first attempt in this C limited, and then I went back into it. Right, I paid attention. I talked about respecting your stops yesterday, and then if it's a whipsaw move, you can get right back into it. That's what I did here. I got stopped out in SE on the break of the 5 minute yesterday. I think there was also a break on the 1 hour, but once we reclaimed, I got right back into SE. I lost a little bit on the scalp for the day, but look at what it did for the day. Right, that's a real nice move, up 6% for the day. So really nice move for me for this one, and I'm still hanging. I like this name for more than a day trade or like a short-term swing. If it only ends up being a short-term swing, that's fine, but really nice turn in this one. Also, Baba was out to all-time highs. I did play this one. It's a name that I've been watching. Staying within this group because the Chinese internet names were very strong today. Tencent, I know nobody looks at this one as much, but I didn't post a lot of charts on my public Twitter this weekend, but I posted this one, up 5.7%. Really nice bull flag. Again, it's going to be gappy, these Chinese, either Chinese internets or Asia, securities, because most of the price action happens overseas, right? So some people, I get that question a lot. Why is this chart so gappy? Well, because all the price action happens in the overnight market, right? While the U.S. markets are closed. So it's going to adjust as soon as the market opens, right? It's going to adjust based on what Asia did last night. So you just kind of have to get used to that. But still, very nice. And this is one of the biggest holdings in EEM as well as the KWEB ETF, right? Which also is looking to turn higher. JD is another one that we go over too. It's trying. I would keep an eye on this one, right? If you're looking for a setup in the next couple days, this JD, if it gets above 83.55, could be off to the races, to the upside. But Baba was a nice trade. Also, I like to trade this group when it's got momentum because these names can really fly. This PDD looks like it's also set up for possibly a move tomorrow. It had to get over the top of value. A lot of names did this today. Either got to the top of value and didn't make it, right? So really the market webs, as I say just about in every video, do a great job for us, right? This Cloudflare, I always chuckle a little bit. We'll see somebody on Twitter say, "Oh, they're buying calls in this name." It's like, okay, well they got to get through 57.88, right? So where that helps us in trading is if we see call action in the name and the stock is sitting, right? They buy calls when the stock's up 4%, which often happens. Up 4 or 5%, they'll start buying calls. And it was sitting right at around like 57.88, which is the top of value. And that gives you a sense, oh, geez, I'm not going to trade it there because it's got to get through resistance. Let's see if it can do it first, right? In this sense, they bought calls in the morning and never showed up again. And the stock did not make it through resistance. So again, good to show those. On the other hand, this PLTR, I know a lot of people have been a fan of this one. Made a really nice move today through $11. But again, I think this market, right? I would not put yourself in the situation to be disappointed, right? If you get a move like this where a stock moves up 10%, right? And you're disappointed by that last 1 hour bar, right? You should be taking, in my opinion, right? I can only tell you what I'm doing. This video is not I'm not giving out any advice or recommendations. I'm telling you what I would do. If I got a 10% move in a stock like this, I would be taking some profits. Maybe not taking the whole thing off because I'm more of a swing trader. And I do believe the majority of the moves happen in the overnight market, as history shows. So you do make more money sitting. However, here's another good example too. this U is all over the place today, right? So it's giving you, so this is a kind of a day traders type name. It's an IPO name. There's not a lot of history on it. It's going to be whippy as hell. Some of these newer IPO names. I don't think people associate that a lot of times. It's not going to trade like a Microsoft or an Amazon. It's a newer name. So it's going to be whippy. There's going to be people, posting things on message boards about some of these newer names because the volume's not as high and they could really push it around and pump the stock. So you take where you take some profits, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. So, in my opinion, unless you're really, a long-term holder and you're not doing much of that during the day, you got in this market until at least, right, market breadth improves, right? To forget about talking about all the events that are in front of us. That. But you could also gauge by what's happening with market breadth, right? Do we have a strong internal market or do we have a weak one? Right now, though, in the last couple of days, we've had a kind of a weak one, right? So you should be taking targets faster when we've got a weak tape where it's very vulnerable to a pullback, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. All right, so that's just a little bit about these names. They are giving you plenty of day trading opportunities, but really that's where, for the day, that's where there was a lot of strength was in some of these smaller names like the Palantir and also the Chinese internet names. I was able to get out of this Eli today, right? Callaway Golf. There was a story that they bought the rest of Top Golf. I don't care. It gave me an out in the stock, right? They've been accumulating calls in this thing for probably about 2 to 3 weeks. I guess that's why they were doing that, right? I still thought the chart, for me, I'm never going into a name just because I see option activity. There's got to be some other fundamental reason, or the chart looks good. But for me, I went into this trade a couple times, was waiting for a breakout, and then again, I got into this trade for around like 85, 90 cents. Some November calls, which are short-term calls, have a limited life, went up to like $1.20 up to $1.50. And I was able to take advantage and get out of the position for profits, right? So that's it for today's video. Again, take one day at a time here. One of the things that I mentioned in the room too was, I think sometimes traders have a tendency. Listen, I make these mistakes too. I made some mistakes. Definitely made some mistakes. Yesterday, and it happens. But I said at 144, I said, okay, my opinion for the rest of the day. Anything more to the upside is above my expectations for what I was expecting for the day. Nothing changes. I don't think we got any new fundamental news. The COVID cases are still moving up. You just heard that Illinois will be shutting down inside dining now. So nothing changes expected. Nothing changed fundamentally for me. I still think it's a choppy tape until the election and big earnings reports are out of the way. I thought this was also telling too, right? If you want a level for the Qs, right? We've got to get in. We've got to get above 283.24. That's where we change a little bit of the short. That's where we begin to change the short-term trend, which right now the short-term trend is down. Right? Not the long-term trend, but the short-term, right? So when I look at 1 hour and look at this price action, that's goes from down and to the right. Where we would change that is 283.17 and further a move above 286.25. You'll also see if we look at the 5-minute value area, that had some difficulties today too, right? Where did this have difficulties? At the top of value for the day. We could not break through the value area for the day on the 5-minute. So again, MarketWeb's giving you everything you need in terms of a roadmap from where you want to be taking risks to be taking it off. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.